What a lovely day! Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Travis, Stopping Traffic in My Rasta Hat, Sleeping Warrior, Jose, Chocolate Sane, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
So why did you say my name and not the plain truth?
Because you may end up joining on different accounts, depending on how it goes.
Got it.
Buenos dias.
Hola.
And Travis is a cool name. So.
True that. Rooted. Do you know what it's actually rooted in? In the Old English, it was a reference to travelers. So, as a truck driver, that's very fitting right now.
Do you ever get called Flat Travis by your colleagues?
No, my dispatchers know that I'm Flat Earth, but no, they don't call me Flat Travis.
So you don't
didn't get the nickname yet.
The word was traverse rather than traveler. Traverse, Travis.
Ah.
Traverse.
They don't get any abuse from the dispatcher. Oi, flat tard, get over to this location.
No.
So just before the show started,
they pretty much leave me alone because I'm pretty independent and they know I'm going to do the job, so they don't have to keep tabs on me. So I hardly hear from them.
That's what they want. Limited hassle. So before the show started, Jose explained that he'd got a formal logical fallacy known as affirming the consequent in Spanish. So take it away, Jose.
Oh, thank you very much. We're going to do in Spanish. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. You know? So, en español, si yo me como un sándwich, voy a estar lleno. Yo estoy lleno, así que me he comido un sándwich. Y en realidad lo que me comí fue un plato de arroz con habichuela. You know? If I eat a sandwich, I'm full. I'm full, therefore I ate a sandwich, even though I just ate a plate of rice and beans. Oh yeah.
Do you know, whatever you're selling, I'll buy it. That sounded fantastic.
That was amazing.
Yeah,
Great
seriously.
he said,
Let's not talk about rice and beans, man, because you're making me hungry.
if I eat a sandwich, I am full. I am full, therefore I ate a sandwich. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. If the Earth is a sphere, we will observe rotation of stars in the southern hemisphere. We observe rotation of stars in the southern hemisphere, therefore the Earth is a sphere. If P, then Q, Q, therefore P. The main bit being, I just ate a plate of rice and beans, so the one doesn't necessarily follow the other. So if I eat a sandwich, I'm full, therefore I ate a sandwich. Well, no, not if you've just drank 10 beers and you're full, or you've just had rice and beans and you're full. It's a formal logical fallacy. Affirming the consequent. Well done, Jose.
Thank you, yeah.
Any signs of curvature?
No.
Not on the Earth.
Any signs of axial rotation?
At least not on the oceans. Let's just say.
I got one.
Go on.
Globe believers say it's the celestial sphere. That's how they call it. Darwin, how do you call it? The globe of the heavens, right?
Yes.
They call it the celestial sphere. So they added the sphere already on it.
No, there's only one person that I know that calls it a celestial sphere, and you can't prove that it's a sphere.
Who's that?
Oh, do I have to say his name?
Yeah.
No,
I
no,
say
not
it.
at all.
Timothy Osman. Boom.
Who?
That'll do.
Timmy!
Oh, Timmy.
Him off South Park.
Oh, really?
Timmy!
Did you guys catch the D-Marble video about this sodium hexafluorine or something like that? Whatever, I think it was the chemical.
Hexafluoride. Yeah, we've covered that.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What was his point on it?
He was showing like that it appeared in a video where that was originally said like rocket bounces off dome or whatever, you know. He says that it looks like when you see the on a balloon video that he like played side by side, that when the balloon bursts, that it looks like it parts of it stay suspended in like that upper layer while the rest of it basically begins to fall down. And he was able to see that because on that balloon rig they actually had not only camera pointed down and out to the side but pointed up as well.
But I don't get the connection with the sulfur hexafluoride.
Because it's a super fluid, basically, that's also technically, I guess, going to be lighter than the ambient air. So it's going to stay up, but also essentially be act as a liquid, I guess, providing some sort of explanation for the medium and the tactics of training in pools and all that other BS.
You mean like that gas that was so heavy that you could like have a tinfoil boat in it? That type of gas, but
no, the wrong direction. That's down.
That responded kind of like a liquid, but it was clearly a gas.
This is up. Yeah, and that guy that performed that test in that box was using the same liquid or gas.
All right. Well,
moving on. Any
have to
signs?
see it to believe it. Could just be that they were, I don't know, statically charged, whatever, and they just hung around for a bit and then later.
The thing was, there was an audio change that made it also sound like it all of a sudden was under some sort of like, or within some sort of liquid. It was just a pretty interesting video. I'm not making any assertions about the video. I'm just saying that it was a interesting video that had some, I don't know, good issues pointed out with it.
Okie dokie. Any signs of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
No.
Ooh, definitely not. Maybe the ether.
We got two different point rotations in the stars, in the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, as they call it.
I see. Unfortunately,
North
that's an affirming the consequent formal logical fallacy.
I call it north and south of the equator.
What's the equator?
The region where apparently the sun is at its highest, as they call it, has the biggest arc on average.
So the equator works on a flat plane as well, though, doesn't it?
But, well, that wasn't my point.
It does not relate to a shape, just a region.
Well, it doesn't relate to the Earth. It's the path of the sun.
Yeah, but it is very specific.
Yeah, specific
Very
to the
specific
sun.
doesn't make it a good argument, though.
Yeah, but it's specific to the path of the sun.
Anything. You say that on every argument you make. It's very specific. And yeah.
Okay. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Yeah.
Not yet.
No.
Working on it.
No.
Somewhere, by the way.
Any evidence that we can have a gas pressure next without a container?
Never.
Nope.
Although, yeah, not entropy gas pressure without a container. Yeah, gas can still have a somewhat of a weight if it's heavy enough, like we talked about with the aquarium and the tinfoil boat resting in the heavier gas within the aquarium. But that's because of the weight. That's a different type of pressure as entropy. So that's every time you ask it, you're basically asking for entropy type gas pressure.
That's Rune Thornton for the super chat. Much obliged.
Whoa. Always this Danish crew.
But yeah, it's still at atmospheric pressure. Yes, it's more dense than the gas that's above it. In the same way you can show a density gradient in liquid, you can do the same with gas. But ultimately speaking, there is actually a pressure above it, as opposed to a lower pressure system, which would have the effects of entropy. So it's a false equivalent to say that that atmospheric pressure gas demonstrates gas pressure without a container. The reason they have to pump it in with a hose and a lid was because when it was at a higher pressure than the atmospheric pressure it eventually settled at, it would have dispersed into the air. Hence they had to put a lid on the container when they pumped it in, because they're pumping it in at a higher pressure. Hence the effects of entropy would have taken place and it would have dispersed into the air and then settled. But they want it in a specific place, so they have to have a lid to keep the gas pressure inside the container. That's how it works. Second law of thermodynamics is a bitch if you're a globehead.
And either the container was the room, or the Earth if the room was open.
I got there's an answer in the chat for this question. Gas pressure without a container. I mean, to me personally, it's laughable, and the explanation is 1,000 plus satellites in orbit.
What? That's the thing being debunked with the second law of thermodynamics. So when someone says we have satellites in space, I say, nah, space is made up. It's not possible. It's a violation of the second law of thermodynamics. So to turn around and say, well, no, but satellites are proof. Really? Let's see your smudgy photos of satellites.
It's always the same, isn't it?
So what about the distance to the sun? Any signs of that?
There is no distance to the sun.
Correct.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
If there was, Simon Dan would have been able to show it to us.
Right. And if it was, then we could potentially correctly make statements that some kind of proximity could have a direct effect.
Any
Doesn't
evidence
it,
of a
Riley?
self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No.
Only at the presupposed spherical Earth.
No.
Or what about that presupposition? Any evidence to the R value? Earth
No.
radius?
No.
Obstruction in the bottom of the buildings.
Obstruction!
Needs curvature.
Obstruction, I hear them cry. No, that's just obstruction.
Any obstructions curvature for certain people, though, right?
It looks like a ball when I think about it.
When you presuppose it's a
Obstruction
ball,
is to curvature.
as long as you've got that R value, all
Obstruction.
will be well. Okay.
But the curve calculator has an R on it. It must be real, right? It must be right.
Well, if you
I
can
don't think R
presuppose
stands
it,
for real.
presuppose it, and then go and confirm that that presupposition is correct
Yo.
according to Tim Osman, and that's all good by him. As long as you start with the premise of being on a ball, it's like, hello, no. If you've already got a radius, that's the bit that you need to prove, not presuppose.
Do it at 10 minutes past.
Say again. Say again.
Well, what can we do then?
Are you talking to
Are you
us?
on the phone?
Oh, sorry, I'm not talking to you. I'll go and mute.
Very handy. Well, I'll lead the blessing for the globeheads in chat. Radius Dominus Gravitas Spiritus Sanctus Arwin. Go in peace, in R you trust.
Hold on, we got a better version.
Better?
Yeah, you posted it, I think.
Oh, the Lord's Prayer.
That's the prayer.
That's superb. I'm going to dig that out. Has anybody got it to
I'll
hand? If
present
you
it.
have, you can read it, but I'm going to see if I can find
I'll
it. If not.
present it right now.
I practiced chanting it last night, but I
Oh,
got.
Owen's got it. Let Owen read it. Let Owen read it.
Okay, this is not mine, but our globe, who art from heaven, hallowed be thy sphere, thy radius come, thy gravity be done, as proposed by Newton and rejected by Einstein. Give us this day our daily rotation, and forgive us for our flat observances, as we forgive those who observe flat against us. Lead us not into Coriolis, but deliver us from independent reference frames. Yeah, it is really good.
This was great. Who wrote
Big
this?
shout out
Who
to
did
Slick
that?
James Johnson for
It's
that. That
even
was great.
adapted its size according to the original prayer. It's
Oh, is that a
piece of
Slick
art.
James?
It's just no the daily Christian prayer. It has the same size, roughly.
No, I'm saying who wrote that? Like,
Slick
is that
James
the guy
Johnson.
Slick James?
Yeah.
Oh, much props to Slick James for that.
Yeah,
That's
well done.
hilarious.
Yeah, I thought that was great. Because that's what we're dealing with, isn't it? I mean, the more we can highlight this religitard nonsense, the better. Because that's what they are. And it seems to trigger them. You know, it certainly did with Tommy. When I was like, well, you're a religious zealot, you've just got a belief in this stuff. It sent him over the edge. So you think, oh, great. Well, if it triggers one guy, that stands to reason it'll trigger another.
Slick James Johnson is in chat right now.
Shout out to you, Slick James. Thanks for the Lord's Prayer Flat Earth edition.
He is not into Coriolis. Oh, man, that's awesome.
Don't let us spin out of control. It's really well thought out.
Give us this day our daily rotation.
That's brilliant.
There are so many people that have dedicated their lives to tell us Earth is a spinning ball, spinning globe, however you want to call it, spinning sphere. So why do we have to not believe them? You know, we just gotta believe them. They are, integral people.
No, I'm good. I believe them when they bring some actual proof and evidence and can convince me that water actually curves around the ball.
Shout out to Peanuts Clark.
Yeah,
in
thanks
chat.
for the super chat, Peanuts. Is Anthony okay from yesterday's show? That's a normal conversation. It just happened to be live. I probably wouldn't necessarily say, "Are you an idiot?" to him if we weren't on air. So that bit.
Everyone has their moments.
I loved it when you were grinding your teeth.
Yeah.
And when you said you're just like, I was just cracking up laughing. I could not. Oh, that was so awesome.
It's so typical, though. That's Anthony's tried to verbalise that a few times and said to the audience, "Look, we don't always agree. Often we will disagree." Well, it's not often that's actually caught live. Well, that was one of those instances. So it was a 2-hour show because I intentionally left it going so that could take place. Because normally I'd end the show after an hour and Anthony and I would have a disagreement afterwards and it would all be off air. But, Anthony was asked about it this morning. I heard it while I was making a coffee in the background by Arwin. He was like, oh, I hadn't even given it a second thought. And frankly, neither had I. It's just, so what? Who cares? These things get discussed. It sparked a different conversation with me and someone else. That's what the whole point of it is, to generate a conversation about this subject. And it's nice to have a conversation where the backdrop to that conversation is flat Earth, because usually we're talking in, like yesterday when we were talking about, I can't remember the exact subject, but we were talking about something spacey, and the whole context of it, I think it was it was the ISS that we were talking about. And every time we're detailing it, we're talking in terms of globe Earth in space, vacuum, all that kind of crap, and we're conceptualizing stuff that people are brainwashed with anyway. Whereas that argument was far more satisfying, because we're not talking in terms of globe Earth. We are to a degree when we pummel the model with Antarctica on the bottom, but we're actually conceptualizing our frames of argument around the obvious and observable flat nature of our reality. We're just talking about a particular part of that flat reality that none of us have a great deal of knowledge about. So it was a very interesting conversation to be able to talk about it and contextualize it in flat Earth. I love that, because that is our world. I don't know what's on the outside edge, neither does Anthony. We'll both concede that in a heartbeat. But we're talking in terms of the way our world actually is observed by us, as opposed to the fantasy
How do you know
world.
there is an edge?
You don't know if there's an edge?
How do you know there is an edge? You said we don't know what the edge is made of.
Well, quite right, exactly. So, you know, Arwin's got one of the millions of possibilities that he likes to adhere to, rectangular looping. Now, again, if he was to assert that here, he'd get the same treatment as Anthony. Probably not so harsh. But ultimately speaking, that isn't proven. And that's kind of the way I want things to go. It's not solipsism, because it's not like I think only I exist. That for the sake of the discussion, to keep the conversation going yesterday, I agreed to that. It's not strictly true. I'm just more empirical than probably most people who are in flat Earth, as in they're happy to accept a story, a just so story, or non-scientific validity. I mean, in the next few weeks, we're going to ruffle a few feathers, John and myself, when we start discussing this. The sword cuts both ways, and the information that I'm trying to disseminate to my audience is that science has been hijacked. Science is a very specific thing. It's a study of the natural world, and it's establishing cause and effect through systematic experimentation. That sounds broad. It isn't. It's very, very narrow. And people have taken that because it gives you proof of things and hijacked it. So everything gets called science. You design a new car, it's science. No, it's not. Absolutely not. And there's flat earthers, unfortunately, who are guilty of the same thing. They'll call everything science. This is science, that is science. Ranty does it all day long. I'm doing an experiment. Oh, really? No, you're not. You're making an observation. Nothing more, nothing less. There's nothing to demean that. In fact, it works to the flat earth's advantage. The Earth doesn't need scientific validity. It's obviously and observably flat. And what the globe heads do is turn a concrete noun, I see a building, no further explanation required. They turn that into an observed phenomena, so they can claim that it needs science applying to it. It's a phenomena that we see this building. No, it isn't. It's just a building. And we have the advantage in that regard. We don't need to validate something we just see. We just see it. And it's as simple as that. It's a breath of fresh air when you start to recognise that. It was for me. You just go, oh, why do I need to actually explain this? I don't need to give you any further proof. Look, there's a building. There it is. It's just there. Oh, no, 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 no. There's a curve blocking it. And that curve has got light bending around it at the presupposed rate that this calculator says the Earth is. So I already know it's a sphere. And I'm going to use your photo to prove it's a sphere, even though my calculator already knows that. It's nonsense. And pointing that out makes me smile every single time it happens. We rarely get the opportunity. People aren't stupid enough now. We've pointed out that it's basically hijacked perspective. People aren't stupid enough to bring the calculator. When we were in the midst of doing that, we had Wiggles on, saying he'd done the same calculations, not Metabunk, but his own version of the same exact thing, using the same exact radius value. And when Anthony asked him to show where the perspective was calculated, he was out of there like a whippet with a bumful of dynamite. Whew, gone. You know, because he didn't realise what we were pointing out to him in the moment. Your calculator's fallacious, it begs the question, and the way it does it, the way it tricks you with obstruction of things, is by using perspective, viewing angle, ignoring it all, relabeling it as something else, Earth curve, and leaving you to beg the question. You come along, you've already got a radius value, you already know it's a sphere before you put a single value in, and every value you do put into the calculation will tell you you're on a sphere. So it makes no difference if you beg the question. You're always going to end up with a sphere outcome. But yeah, sorry, my little rant for the day. I do want to change the subject if Anthony's hopefully close to his microphone, because Anthony's had some very, very big and important news, which we have discussed in the past, but in a kind of light-hearted, non-official way. So I'm going to give a brief summary, and then I'm going to pass over to Anthony, who's going to give a bit more detail about this. So, as I say, about 6 months ago, Anthony was looking into getting some sort of information regarding to the heliocentric deception published. Not just published as in a book that you could go and buy from W.H. Smith's, but published as in academically published, peer-reviewed, something that's official. And in order to do this, he's had to jump through a few hoops, and ultimately it's going to cost quite a substantial amount of money. That's something else I'll come on to later. We will be putting our hand out, cap in hand, going to the audience and saying this needs funding. So that will also follow. But that's the boring bit. The exciting bit is the task at hand. So I'm going to pass over to Anthony, who's hopefully going to give the audience a bit of detail about exactly what this is. Go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah. Well, shut this door. It started with a troll account, and the troll account basically said Riley cannot do a PhD, and it kind of inspired me to look into the possibility of what would I need to do to top up what I already have, because I've got numerous credits towards qualifying for a master's degree, and all I did was I looked to see how many credits I had, how many did I need, and what could be done to get a master's degree from it. But I wanted to try and do something that was flat Earth related. So what I did was I researched different universities to see what courses that I could apply for to get this particular thing. And with the intention of putting a pro flat Earth dissertation citation, report, document into the education system, I wanted to try and create something that would be peer reviewed, and it would analyze or criticize or critically look at the state of the education system that we live in, that we are taught, that we are teaching our children, and see whether or not there is anybody accountable for stuff that may not be right. And I've looked into it like unofficially because I need access to legal materials. And I've been trying to research, is anybody responsible for what we get taught? Because it seems on the face of it that there is always somebody accountable. But the more I've looked into it, it appears that nobody's accountable. Everybody's accountable, but yet nobody's accountable. So I was looking at different research, different research courses at higher level. And different universities do different things. And I found one that does what I want. And my intention is to try and get a pro-flat earth dissertation written that is peer reviewed by my peers who are all solicitors or barristers in the profession, and basically criticize or challenge the law, the UK domestic law, on who is accountable for the national curriculum. Because there's numerous articles when the national curriculum gets updated, you always get both sides in the news. Like the Guardian, for example, it'll say such and such a teacher says that this is ridiculous because they no longer are teaching this, and somebody else will say this is ridiculous because they're teaching this instead. So it's always very contentious when the national curriculum's changed. But who's actually accountable for what goes into it? If somebody teaches, for example, that the sun is 93 million miles away, that claim should be true. We have people like the Rumpus that claim it's the whole body of science, Nathan, but when put to the test, doesn't seem to exist. So it's like, well, is it the case that the 93 million mile sun is just a number that's been plucked from nowhere? Or is it that difficult to find that the evidence to support it, it's buried deep within somewhere that you just can't get the information, that you have to just trust that it's true? So with regards to, say, the 93 million mile sun, just for example, it doesn't breach the law because the law says that basically everybody's accountable. But when you read into it, it appears to be the case that actually nobody's accountable. And that's what I want to do. I want to criticize or critique the law in the UK, how it applies to the national curriculum, and whether or not teachers, board of governors for universities, ministers in the education department, or indeed how high can it go? I want to criticize the people that are in the education system on facts that we can prove are at least debatable in terms of the evidence, because they would have to prove the 93 million mile sun, for example, if they were going to show that their statements that we were being taught were actually true. And I don't know whether they can. I've been asking for it for weeks and weeks and weeks, and I keep hearing the story about 93 million mile sun. Now, it goes further. I mean, there's so many arguments that we can put forth to the education system to question the validity of what we're told, because none of it seems to be verified. A lot of it seems to be a story. That's why I say that's a lovely story. So I want to try and find the best, maybe 5 flat earth arguments that we can challenge the system critically and see whether or not they can validate this with evidence to support that it's actually true. Because I think I would be able to put a good argument forward that not only somebody would be legally responsible, but particular people would be legally responsible for assertions that lack evidence to prove that it's actually true. Now, the risk with it, of course, is that it would be seen as being anti-establishment or somewhat unethical or whatever. There is a real risk that they may not actually accept it as a submission because of whatever reason they deem suitable ethically, morally. It could even class as terrorist, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what the position would actually be. But what my intention is to critically analyse the law about the national curriculum and whether or not teachers, boards of governors, heads of states, or whoever, how high can we go with the law to see whether or not anybody is actually capable of being accountable if we're taught things that we cannot verify to be true. And that's my intention. See if I can get it's not going to be an overtly flat earth, the earth is flat submission, but it's definitely going to be a critical approach to what the law says. And whether or not there's ever been any prosecutions, which I will find out. I have access now to some parts of the legal structure that I need, some parts of the legal databases, and I can see what the current law is. But I'll also find out whether anybody's ever been charged with, and it's just a gut feeling. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty certain that there'll be nobody that's ever been charged with false teaching, and that's really my intention. Basically, can we hold anybody accountable for the assertions made by science when they don't seem to be able to prove that it's true? So I'm going to be looking for the best 5 arguments that I can put into this dissertation to put it through the peer review process by actively working solicitors and barristers, and hopefully get it back out the other side, peer reviewed and therefore credible. Because I don't think that a lot of the stuff we're being told is true. I don't think they can prove it. And I'm going to question it, because I think that it's valid that we can submit things to the institution of the education, critically analysing the world in which we live. If it's true, then they should be able to prove it, right? Well, that's my intention. Can it be? Is there a legal case to answer for people that put assertions into the system when the evidence is really difficult to find? Because I can't find that distance to the sun. Or not so much the distance, but I can't find where it comes from. Yeah, I hear the story, Venus, radar, Christine Huygens, assumptions to do with Venus being the same size as Earth. But that doesn't prove the point. And I'm looking and looking and looking and looking, and I can't find it. Now, is it because it's buried? Shouldn't be. Whole body of science is should be one of the most fundamental questions that we can easily find and put our fingertips to the proof that it's true. I don't seem to be able to find it. Now, it could be me. But it's going to be a kind of a call to arms, because I'm going to focus on like 5 key points that I think are the strongest FE arguments. And I'm going to critically analyze the law and see whether or not anybody could be accountable. And if so, in what circumstances. And one of the spanners that's going to go into the mix is going to be one particular astronaut that's a UK astronaut and what he tells people. So it's going to be a wide discussion. There's going to be a lot of potential avenues. And I think that we could form a good, valid argument to question whether anybody, and if so, who, would be responsible for unfounded citations of science that's not got any evidence to support it. We should be able to prove these things. It shouldn't be the case that I have to sit here week after week after week asking about the 93 million mile sun, because if the whole body of science is supporting this, where is it? And I don't think it's there. And I think that I can put a really good argument forward, questioning the law that we get told about the solar system that we're all supposed to live in, and see whether or not there could be an argument for somebody to be prosecuted either personally or professionally for making assertions without evidence. And that's my intention. I hope that I can do that. And I'm nervous while I'm talking to you guys.
Well, let me just summarize.
Very ambitious project.
It is ambitious, and one of the things that was discussed a couple of months ago, when might have not even be that, when Ranty was looking to do a fundraiser for a camera, it was suggested that Anthony did exactly the same. But there was a hi Zinder, how you doing?
Hello, fine. Go on.
There was a suggestion that that Anthony did exactly the same as Ranty, but at the time he was umming and ahhing about doing this, and the idea had been on the table for a while. It was just purely down to the fact that it's such an expensive thing to do, and there's people already trolling. Hi, Earth Flattener.
Hello.
There's already people in the chat trolling saying Riley needs money. Well, yeah, and I'm not embarrassed to do this with Anthony right by my side. I will beg for the support to actually achieve our ends, because it's a worthwhile cause. It's hi, Physics Warrior.
Hi, Nathan.
Hello. So, yeah,
Hello.
There will be a Sleeping Warrior-a-thon, probably with a better name, in the next few days. And, yeah, we will absolutely be putting our cap out in front of us and saying, yeah, we do need your support to do this, as much as people may want to say, oh, Anthony should pay for this himself. He doesn't have the funds to do it. It's something that isn't necessary for his job.
I'd like to see a plan first, to be honest.
Let me just address the money side of it. I can't afford to pay for these fees myself. The issue is not whether I can afford it or not. It's the issue is the risk of it being rejected on the basis that it might be unethical, unmoralistic, against the establishment in some way. Basically, it's pro-flat Earth. And I'm not sure that it's actually a valid reason to kick it out. It might be, but there is a risk that they would just automatically refuse it on that basis. So
you shouldn't bring up the shape of the Earth at all, and just
I'm not gonna
focus on the faultiness of the teachings.
Yes.
It has to be correct.
Yes.
And it's not.
So the 93 million mile sun is a really good example where I don't have to mention the words flat or Earth, and I can just question where is the authority for it, because we should be able to find this stuff. We should be able to find the proof. And it doesn't seem to be there. So I don't think I'm ever going to mention the words flat Earth in the document once. But what I am going to do is argue the best 4, 5, 6 points to make the question or to pose the question. And the reality is this: it may get rejected. And on that basis alone, I'm not prepared to put my own money into it, because it is something that flat Earth would massively benefit for if it didn't. But if it was rejected, that would make me think that the establishment itself, the education itself, will never allow you to question it. Do you know what I mean? So
how about the argument of the molten iron core? Like, for real, they show the layers all down to the core in the books, you know, to childs.
But the deepest they've ever dug is 7 miles, 8 miles. So it's like that's one of the other strong arguments. Gyroscopes maybe not showing the fact that the Earth spins might be another one. You can put diopter on your phone and fly across the states, and it'll show 0 angle tilt from the circumference that you're supposed to have flown around. That could be another one. I'm not saying it will. But what I'm saying is there are at least 5 key arguments that I could present in such a way that doesn't seem to have the evidence to support it. And if
pressurized system next to a vacuum.
Yeah, pressurized system existing next to a vacuum without a barrier of some kind of membrane. Now,
definitely again, water.
But again, regarding the money side of it, I can afford this. The issue is it valuable to flat Earth if we can get a peer-reviewed paper by barristers, solicitors, and the legal profession within the education system? Because if it comes out the other side and it doesn't get rejected, then I think that's a really valuable commodity for flat Earth, because then we've validly criticised the system and it would be peer-reviewed. So it's like, is that worth putting time, effort? I mean, I'm prepared to put the time in to write it. I'm prepared to quantify it. I know most of the key arguments already anyway. It's just putting them on paper. But I enjoy the idea, or I look forward to the idea of arguing that, are we being taught the truth? And if we're not being taught the truth, is anybody responsible? Or is it actually the case that nobody's responsible? In which case that tells you a story in itself. But I just think it'd be a really good idea.
Hold on. Or you could basically demand that every time there is a certain teachings of things that are unknown, that there's a disclaimer basically mentioned, something like that.
I mean, if we're being taught the sun's 93 million miles away,
that the teacher is obligated to mention the disclaimer or the presupposition.
Well, I don't know. I think the Secretary of State for Education would be ultimately responsible for teaching truth.
Yeah, can I just speak from the chat?
About the teacher.
Sorry
this
to
is about
interrupt,
people who are
guys. Can I
submitting
just...
the curriculum.
Yeah, it's not about the teacher. It's about the system itself.
Sorry to interrupt. So CJ Ranty says, why is your voice shaking, Anthony? Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to answer on Anthony's behalf, because he's incredibly nervous. So while most people who are chat trolls or have no intention whatsoever of supporting this will criticise Anthony... Sorry, can you pop yourselves on mute if you're just not talking? So while they will want to criticise Anthony for asking for money for this, the bottom line is Anthony will dedicate huge chunks of his time and his money, because that was something else that was discussed prior to this in terms of what should be asked for. And Anthony said, well, should I ask for my expenses and this and that and the other? And I said, no, just ask for the amount that the course costs, the amount that it costs to get this into, potentially in, there's no guarantees here, potentially into the education system, just that cost alone. Because Anthony will still have to pay for petrol, he'll still have to dedicate huge chunks of his time to this, which, like anybody knows, time is money. That's what he's going to be sacrificing in terms of his own job to achieve this in the first instance. But if he's dedicating huge chunks of his money and time whilst losing time to his actual job, then it seems unreasonable when it is simply an exercise in getting flat Earth into mainstream education, published, peer-reviewed. That's the objective, and it's too big a risk for one person to shoulder if they're the one actually doing all the work. Now, based on this, I've convinced Anthony to do this. I've been putting pressure on him to do this, and I've said I will support him in raising the funds to do so, and I will absolutely stand by him and do exactly that. I'll be true to my word, as I was with Ranty in the same exact instance when he tried to raise money for a camera. In that instance, he simply could not afford that camera, and there was no way he would ever have it unless there was a fundraiser. Well, the same principle is true here, not necessarily just down to pound notes, but down to risk, the amount of risk that's involved, and therefore you have to split that risk amongst people who see the benefit. The people who don't see the benefit, we don't care about your opinion. You can call us scammers all you like. There will be something offered at the end if it is successful. If it's not, the risk that was involved financially will have been shared. The burden will have spread across more people, and that's the objective. Ultimately, the other objective is to get support. So when people support you financially, they're normally more inclined to pay attention to what you're actually doing and the whys and wherefores of why you're doing it, because you have to actually tell them 10 times to try and get them to put their hand in the pocket. So for the same reasons, it's a worthwhile exercise just doing the fundraiser. Everybody who's in the chat criticising now, saying, oh, well, pay for yourself then. Well, they'll be in the chat saying the same things on that fundraiser, and they'll be getting exposed to the exact same information that's been disseminated here over and over again, so that we can appeal to people to support us. Now, support's a broad term. It's not necessarily financial, but ultimately speaking, Anthony won't just be doing this alone financially. He'll have support, and that's something that I have encouraged, and I'll stand by that, and the reasons for doing so, which I'm more than happy to explain time and time again till I'm blue in the face. This is a worthy cause. I will be supporting it as soon as that GoFundMe set up. I'll put my limited budget into it as much as I can afford to, and I encourage others to do the same. Exactly the same as with Ranty. But with Anthony, it's not a camera that we're chasing after. He could have done a GoFundMe immediately after Ranty and probably would have been successful in doing so. But he's decided, no, if I'm going to actually put my cap out in front of me, as the people in chat might want to phrase it, then it will be for this, because I see it as more beneficial to the overall cause. And I agree, wholeheartedly.
I mean, one of the key things that makes this possible is the access to databases and resources that I currently don't have. When you go into any university establishment, you get access, you get login details, you can go onto the electronic resources databases, of which there are numerous ones. It's having that information, that knowledge, that stuff, which may well exist in science.
The registry.
But ultimately, it's without information, I wouldn't be able to know who's responsible for what we get taught. Because I get the feeling that it sounds on paper that everybody would be responsible. But I reckon when you look into the minutiae of it, it probably is the case that nobody's responsible. Because it just seems to be everybody's going to be responsible on the face of it, but nobody's actually responsible. So for me, one of the most important things is going to be, well, how many prosecutions have there ever been in these? And I'll find all that out. But the reason why I'm trembling a little bit is because I'm nervous, because it's serious. This is probably when if it doesn't get rejected and it gets accepted and then it gets passed and comes back out the other side, that's when it can be released to like the journals and stuff, because it will be the case that there's a credible argument for whether or not we're being told the truth, because otherwise it would be rejected and it would be a fail. But so long as it comes back out the other side and there's a credible argument in law whether or not somebody or anybody or nobody would be responsible, if the question's been asked like at a high level, then I don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, I'm trembling a little bit because I'm partly excited but also really nervous because it's serious.
You need to dig into this a little more, because if you can't actually find anyone responsible, there's a big chance that the judicial system will simply just ignore you because you have no guilty party to point at.
No, sorry, just to clarify, Alwyn, he's not seeking prosecution here. That's not the objective. Maybe you can explain it again, Anthony, just because if it's...
Yeah, the idea, when you're doing academic papers in law, it's not so much about the answer being yes or no that they look at. They look at how you've come to it, because that's really the process, applying the process, researching the law, knowing the cases, knowing who's ever been prosecuted for these type of things before. It's how you get to your answer that they're most interested in, because it's academic. It's not real world. Now that doesn't
What's
make
going to
it.
be the end product? Because that's we're talking about the information that you're going to have access to, and that's good. But what is the end?
The end product is getting a peer-reviewed paper through the education system. Now, when I say peer-reviewed, the people that are my teachers, as it were, are practicing barristers and solicitors. They are my peers. Now, they won't put something through for the award if it's not credible. Right. That process makes it peer-reviewed, and it adds credibility to it on the other side if it does come out the other side.
Absolutely, I agree to that. But you do realize that they can, as a group, politically just choose to ignore it.
Correct.
Peer review is not a guarantee that you will suddenly be name dropped or mentioned anytime.
Correct. So,
but it does give
that is the risk
once you engage in the process.
That is the risk. Ultimately, the risk is they may never publish it. They may never put it through. And if that's the case, then that's the reason why I don't want to put my money to it, because it is a contentious topic. We all know it is. It's just a case of, is it valuable? Is it a valuable thing for Flat Earth that we have something go through the system, come back out the other side, and then we can use it in future to say, well, you guys can't prove your cases to be true. And it is legal in the UK that certain laws have to be abided by. Are they being, and it'll generate discussion, awareness, promotion. Flat Earth might benefit massively just from the exposure from it.
Yeah, but it might not change anything because the ones who make the policies.
Well,
yeah, but at least he's trying.
And I'm not trying to discourage. I think it's a great initiative, but I would consider that if you really eventually wanted them to have no choice but to respond, then you got to make it a prosecution. But yeah, you got to find somebody that can be pointed at first. So this is a very good first step.
Yeah. And obviously my deal on this, my part in this is obviously putting the time and the resources into it to research it. I don't have the heavy resources of a big mortgage to work all the hours under the sun. I'm not a slave economically to the system. I do have plenty of time on my hands. And it's like, can I put my time into Flat Earth in a positive way that will create something interesting, positive, and constructive at the end of it? And is there any point doing it? I think there is a valid point to it. And I think it would be brilliant for Flat Earth, because I think people would benefit from it if they realize that these laws may not be being complied with. And people may get actually accountability or may not get accountability. And it may think, well, the laws are there, but nobody ever gets prosecuted, because it might be the case that such and such a law exists and there's been zero prosecutions. Maybe it's because the system's robust and tight, or maybe it's because maybe nobody's actually responsible. I don't know. I'll find them. I'll find out what the rules are.
Don't underestimate under the counter laws, little rules. Bureaucrats do it all the time in England, in America, everywhere. So, but yeah, I wish you the.
No, it's funny because the ballers are always constantly going about, why don't we get anything peer reviewed? Why don't we have things in journals?
Oh yeah.
You know, so somebody actually wants to try and do that and at least take a step to accomplish that. And like trolls, you guys just sitting there and just make fun of Riley. Like, I don't understand that shit, guys. Like, wouldn't you guys want some type of movement like that? You guys are the ones asking for peer-reviewed articles and journals and all of that. Yeah. So I don't get why you wouldn't be behind this. But nah, you guys just sit and laugh and type, because that's what you guys do.
They're trying to use it all as a weapon.
And I also remind myself of what the trolls are like, because for me personally, the trolls inspire me and motivate me to do a little bit more. I mean, if I wasn't getting trolled so hard by people like Slice Barcane, I would never have gone back to the beach and lay on my belly to try and get that land that I actually got, and then they all ignored because basically they couldn't explain it, and that kicked me out of the hangout as a result of it. I wouldn't have done that. Ranty wouldn't have gone back and done his work if he wasn't getting trolled by the trolls. So for me, the trolls inspire me and push me. And I think that the next thing that I could do to make this interesting for us all, I mean, it'll just raise awareness. But what I'll do, this is what I'm going to do. I'll put the time and the effort in to get this publication done. And I will also, once it's been through the system and hopefully come back out the other side and they've not failed it, as long as I pass it, as long as it passes and it doesn't actually fail for some bizarre political reason, which I'm pretty certain they'll try at some point, maybe.
Is Is there anybody in this panel right now? I don't know if there's 8, 9, or 10 people that oppose this idea that think Riley is wasting his time or he's going to be wrong. Zindel, anybody opposing?
I have questions. I have questions. I'm not sure if I do oppose it.
No, ask away.
All right. I'm here in the U.S., so I'm not sure how everything works on the other side in UK. When Anthony's citing as far as barristers and solicitors, do they operate as just in a legal capacity, the court of law, or are they professors? I'm just curious how this
I can't hear what he said. Can you ask the question again?
He's saying, are your
I'm on a mobile
tutors...
phone.
Are your tutors...
You're very quiet.
Are the people who are on the course professional in the legal, or are they
they're
professors?
They're all teachers. All the teachers are all either or barristers or solicitors in practice right now. You can look them up. I'm not going to reveal any information about the institution that's involved or the teachers' names for obvious troll reasons. I don't want anyone poisoning the well.
No, obviously not.
But they are all in practice as barristers or solicitors, yes.
Yeah, we'll just discuss as far as the title, because from past experience with Mullen, we'll discuss, be more safer. So wouldn't be the presentment be much makes more sense in front of the education board instead of the barristers and solicitors?
I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying, Nathan.
Did you hear what I said?
No, you're too quiet. Anybody hear him to repeat what he said?
He said don't present it in front of a legal board, present it in front of an academic-based board.
Academic board being the university itself.
Right.
Because the academic is both sides to the argument, whereas the legal one is the best argument forward. So it's a different perspective, but it's no less credible. It's the alternative view. So academia is the way to put this forward and get this in, not necessarily straight through the courts, because obviously straight through the courts, there's always some argument that may thwart you legally as well as procedurally. But academically, so long as you qualify and quantify your position, pretty much anything goes. You can argue anything as long as you've got something to support your case, and that's the whole point of what I'm trying to do. Get stuff to. I mean, I know most of the arguments, but I don't know what the law is. I don't know what the cases are that help, if there are any. But I just think that it's something that, because it's peer reviewed by credible people in the profession, I don't think that the ballers would then be able to criticize us for never having any peer review. Why haven't you been to the newspapers? Well, this is my way of maybe getting something that is credible into Flat Earth that we can basically discuss, it might just be something that triggers a lot of people to question it, but it'll be reviewed in or published in different journals as well later on down the line, not straight away, but once it comes back out the other side.
Okay, I've got a quick question.
Think it's an
Sorry
excellent
to
idea.
interrupt.
You have my support.
Thank you, Rasta. So the amount that you're going to be asking for in terms of the fundraiser is 2,050. Is that correct?
The course fees are 2,050. There is an admin fee of 50, and I think it's going to be. I need to find out what the final figure is. I believe the final figure is just over 2,000, but I don't know the exact figure yet. I just know that it's there or thereabouts. But I'm going to put it in at. Well, I think it's going to be 2,050, unless. I don't know. It's just over $2,000 is the figure.
Sure, well, the question. Hold on. The question is, what is that actually covering? What does that 2,050?
Just the fee, just the academic fee.
What is an academic fee?
The money that you pay to the university in question to be provided the access to the databases, to have the lectures, to allow you to submit, to get the response back after the submission. You pay in the academic. You pay in the institution. The state, basically.
Good question.
Okay, why couldn't you publish without doing this? Why would you need to go through the course to publish?
You could publish it, but it wouldn't be peer reviewed. You have to be to get it out the other side.
You're paying for that accreditation process.
Yeah, it means it's being scrutinized by the university staff and critiqued before it's been published and then submitted for the award itself. So yeah, you could do it outside of the institution, but then the argument would then be, well, it's not as strong as that one, O'Reilly, is it? So it's for me the answer is, yeah, you could publish it, but it's got no credibility behind it.
I see no problem with that.
It's just the cost, the fees for the actual course, to be on the course, to get your number or your ID badge. That's it, literally it. There's no other money involved in it. I haven't had the invoice yet. I have done the enrollment process and I've been accepted onto it unconditionally. But I haven't had to figure the actual invoice yet, but I know it's around about the £2,000 figure. So, I mean, if you had like 80 people at 25 quid, I mean, it's going to be, I don't know how much that'll be. That's going to be there or thereabouts, isn't it?
Well, obviously how successful the Sleeping Warrior-a-thon is anybody's guess. Obviously, I'll promote it, and as I said earlier, I'll be by your side promoting it in the same way I'm promoting it here. But ultimately, that's something else I wanted to come on to, because you've said a couple of times, you know, I don't want to put my money up towards it. That's not the case. You will have expenses incurred, and they will be significant, and the time that you will put in is also going to be significant. I just don't want the audience to be left with the impression that you're not willing to put your money up for it, because that's simply not the case.
Well, my money, I mean, I've got to attend numerous times the institution in question. That involves traveling, commuting. I also have to pay to publish it. I have to pay to get the award at the end of it. There are extra costs that go into it for me, but also my time writing out the dissertation. I think it's a 15,000 word dissertation. That time, it takes weeks to be able to prepare and write and execute that. I mean, that time's valuable. My main expense is going to be time.
You may even want to pay to outsource editing.
Say again?
I said you may even want to pay for outsourced editing.
Sure. The money is literally just for the university. It's not for me.
Sure. And I'm sure the people who will be asking you to verify this will be the people who will not donate 1 penny.
Yeah. Well, I can verify it. I mean, I'm not going to reveal the institution because I'm not going to allow anybody to poison the well. But ultimately, there's enough people that will see the documents inside to be able to vouch for it. Because if the trolls behaved better, I would be totally transparent with it. But the trolls don't behave, and they will poison the well. We all know they will. It'll be a sabotage attempt immediately. So obviously, I'm not going to do that. But I will present the information to credible people within Flat Earth, and they can vouch that they've seen the documents, that they know it's happening, that there is definitely no scam. Because I believe that people should see it, but it's because the trolls can't be trusted to behave like adults. That is the reason why I can't publicly do it, like with open, absolute transparency, because we all know what they'll do.
They'll pull a George Brian Mullen.
Yeah, exactly. They'll do what George Hatton tried to do to Brian Mullen
for
being wrong. Not Brian Mullen, George.
Yeah.
Wrong in every respect, not in his actions afterwards, but also his actual assertion to begin with was incorrect. So, based on his in his misunderstanding of Coriolis, he tried to have a man's job, and ultimately, if Anthony reveals the details of the whys and wherefores of the actual course itself or the institution itself, that's all that will happen.
So George just put in chat, write a first draft for review. I will review it for you. George, you wouldn't be qualified to review it, unfortunately.
You're not an authority here, George. You have absolutely no legal qualifications whatsoever. You're just a senile old bastard who thinks he's qualified in everything. So why would we ask you to do this, George? Do you have a legal qualification? Of course not. You're just a senile old bastard who thinks he knows everything and is often wrong.
Shout out to adult diapers.
Shout out for Jackson.
What I do want to tell people is that the course has actually started. Now, I came to it late, not realizing or not even considering that I was even going to do it. It was just curiosity as to see when the course actually started. It started on Monday, just gone.
Well, that's true, but I was putting pressure on you to do it, as were a couple of other people who think the idea is great. So, yeah, this is another reply to the guy who said, oh, why does he sound nervous? Well, I'm not going to. It's like with Ranty when he's like, I don't want to go e-begging for this camera. I was like, I want you to have that camera, and I can't afford to just buy you a camera. You can't afford to buy a camera. So I want this to happen. And in the same vein, I was the same with Anthony. I was like, this is a worthy cause. This is something real. This isn't street activism. This is real. I'm not saying street activism isn't real. That's a bad analogy. I'm just saying it's something that's more substantial and of benefit, in my opinion. So I was very keen for Anthony to do it, and it has been rushed at the end when he's looked into it again after a little bit of pressure being applied by a few people who will remain unnamed. But Anthony is going to be doing a lot of work. There's no two ways about that. I'm not going to be cracking the horsewhip. It's down to him once this happens. But there's also the pressure on him if people have actually crowdfunded this. So there's a little bit more pressure on Anthony, which is no bad thing. Sorry, Anthony. Shout out to Plain Truth for the super chat. Much obliged. Is that actually you, Plain Truth? You're on the panel.
Yeah, well, I'm throwing it in, man. Step it up.
Yeah, dude.
So yeah, that's going to be coming up in the not too distant future. Like with Ranty, it'll be done on Anthony's channel. So we'll run a Sleeping Warrior-a-thon to raise these funds. Not only will it raise funds, all the naysayers will get to hear the information while they naysay, and the benefits of doing so, and it will generate discussion, it'll generate a buzz and a vibe. So there's more than one practical reason to actually asking people to crowdfund something. It's not necessarily just about getting the money to do so. That's a big part of it.
Let me restate the risks. I mean, the risks are, because it's very political by nature. The real risk is that it'll be rejected, and I can't guarantee that it'll be submitted, but it may get stopped. And if it does get stopped for some nonsense reason, then that tells people within Flat Earth that you can't challenge the establishment, in my opinion. But there is the real risk that this may not actually happen, in terms of the university in question may stop it. Now, I'm going to have to do it as neutral, because you've got to argue both sides. I'm going to have to do it as neutral as possible to be able to get it through the checks and the I don't know what it's going to be called, but I guess it would be like an integrity check, because I can't put in it the
ethics process. The ethics process.
Yeah, I can't argue that the Earth's flat, because it's simply going to get rejected. I've got to balance it out. I've got to overlap it with the current law in place, and do it from both sides. So it has to be relatively neutral. But the fact that it's even the fact that there's even a question in the first place that goes against, even if it does get countered, that is borderline. It's risky. So it's risky that they may not allow it. So I have to be careful, and that's why that's why I'm nervous, because I know what I'm setting myself up for. I know what's expected from the establishments in terms of the universities in question, and I know that it's risky. I know that, but I'm going to do it in a way that's backdoor. But I'm never going to mention the word flat Earth, but I am going to mention the questionable stuff that we're taught, because I'm an adult at 37 years old, 38 just turned, and I can't find the proof that proves that the sun's a 93 million mile away. And if I appeal to authority, and I have to appeal to people like the Rumpus or Simon Dan, and they just give me a lovely story, that doesn't prove the point. Even though it might persuade a lot of people that it may well be true because someone said it, it doesn't make it true. What makes it true is proof, and there doesn't seem to be proof. And that's the reason why I'm interested, because I think that we might not be being told the truth. Where does the 93 million come from? We all know the story. It comes from Cassini. But is it actually true? And we all get taught that, but is it true? And is anybody accountable if it's not? Because you can't make the assertion unless it is actually true. Because the correct position would be, well, we don't know how far the distance to the sun actually is. And maybe that's what we should be being taught. But must be proof somewhere, right?
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, then you know what to do. But if you liked the show, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. Also, a massive shout out to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!